Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Haven 9 hung in the void like a metallic flower, its petals made of docking bays and observation decks, all rotating slowly around a central hub that pulsed with the light of 10,000 species going about their business. It was, by all accounts, the most boring place in the galaxy to work security, which was exactly how Wunhak liked it. The insectoid officer stood at his post, his forearms crossed in a posture that suggested infinite patience, or perhaps infinite boredom. It was hard to tell with his species. His compound eyes tracked the steady stream of travelers passing through the checkpoint, each one stepping through the massive archway scanner that hummed with enough processing power to analyze a being down to their cellular structure in under 3 seconds. Another day, another 1,000 beings who think they're special. Wunhak clicked, his mandibles moving in what his partner had learned to recognize as his version of a sigh. Blix, who was currently occupying a transparent cylinder filled with the nutrient solution that kept their gelatinous body coherent, burbled in response. The translator strapped to their container rendered it as, "You need a vacation, my friend. When was the last time you didn't complain about the monotony?" "Monotony keeps people alive," Wunhak replied, gesturing with 2 of his hands at the readouts streaming across his screen. "See? Cavaxian merchant, civilian. Thulian student, civilian. Frost delegate, civilian. Boring, 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 and nobody dies. You're fun at parties, I can tell." "I wouldn't know. I don't go to parties." Blix would have rolled their eyes if they had any. Instead, they rippled in a way that conveyed the same sentiment. The morning shift had been proceeding exactly as expected, which is to say, with numbing predictability when she walked in. Later, when filing his report, Wunhak would struggle to explain what made him notice her. She wasn't particularly tall, though humans rarely were by galactic standards. She wasn't armed, at least not visibly. She wasn't even wearing anything unusual, just the standard travel clothes that most beings wore when hopping between stations. Comfortable, practical, forgettable. But something made him watch her approach the scanner. Maybe it was the way she moved, loose and easy, like someone who'd never had reason to be nervous in her life. Maybe it was the small smile on her face as she juggled a tablet and a sealed container of what looked like plants? Maybe it was just that humans were still new enough to the Galactic Union that seeing one was noteworthy. Violet, her ID tag would later confirm the name, stepped up to the scanner archway and paused to let a Quellan family waddle through ahead of her, their 8 offspring chirping and bouncing around their parents' legs. She even waved at one of the little ones, who stared at her with wide, curious eyes. "Cute," she murmured, apparently to herself. Wunhak's translator caught it. Anyway, he found himself agreeing, despite his general policy of finding nothing cute while on duty. When her turn came, Violet walked through the scanner with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. The archway lit up, its internal systems engaging in their usual ballet of quantum analysis and biological profiling. Wunhak glanced at his screen, expecting the standard readout. Species, human status, unarmed civilian threat assessment, minimal clearance. Granted. He was already looking away, ready to wave her through when his screen flickered. The word "granted" vanished. New text appeared, and Wunhak's mandibles stopped mid-click. Reclassifying. Blix? The gelatinous being had been watching a cargo hauler argue with another checkpoint officer about tariffs, which was infinitely more entertaining than their job. "I think we have a problem." The screen continued to scroll. Threat assessment. Undefined biological analysis. Anomalous weapon. Status: inconclusive reclassifying. 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 Violet had made it 3 steps past the scanner when Wunhak's voice, amplified by the station's speaker system, called out, "Excuse me, traveler. Please return to the checkpoint." She turned, confusion written across her face. "Is there a problem?" "Probably not," Blix offered, trying to sound reassuring. They were good at that. Being made of translucent goo gave them an inherently non-threatening appearance. "Just a small technical thing. Happens all the time." It did not, in fact, happen all the time. It had never happened. Not in the 6 years Wunhak had worked this checkpoint. Violet walked back, hugging her container of plants a little closer to her chest. "Did I forget to declare something? These are just soil samples from home. The agricultural conference said I could bring—" "The samples are fine," Wunhak interrupted, all 4 of his eyes focused on his screen. The scanner was now running what appeared to be its entire diagnostic library, cycling through every threat assessment protocol in its database. He'd seen this kind of processing loop before, but only when the system encountered something completely outside its parameters. Like the time someone had tried to smuggle a quantum-locked weapon that technically existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously. But this was a botanist with dirt. "Can you step through the scanner again, please?" he asked, keeping his voice level and professional. "Sure, okay," Violet complied, walking back through the archway. The scanner lit up again, running its analysis. Species: human status. Unarmed civilian. Wunhak relaxed slightly. A glitch, then. Just a reclassifying. Threat assessment. Undefined warning. Unable to complete standard protocol. "This is weird," Blix said, which was the understatement of the cycle. By now, several other travelers had stopped to watch. A mantarine couple whispered to each other, their wing-like appendages fluttering nervously. A group of Thulian students had their communication devices out, no doubt already posting about the delay on whatever social platform their generation favored. Violet looked between the 2 security officers, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Am I in trouble? Because I really didn't do anything. I'm literally just here to talk about nitrogen-fixing bacteria. It's very boring. I promise it's very, very boring." "Nobody thinks bacteria talks are exciting," Blix assured her, then paused. "Do they? You'd be surprised." "Well, no, actually you wouldn't. It's just me and like 8 other people who get excited about it." Wunhak held up one hand, the universal gesture for wait, and pulled up the scanner's detailed log. What he saw made his antennae twitch in a way that, had he been human, would have been equivalent to his blood running cold. The scanner hadn't malfunctioned. It had correctly performed every single test in its repertoire. The problem was the results. Bone density, higher than expected for body mass, inconsistent with civilian lifestyle. Muscular structure, efficient, suggesting regular physical stress beyond recreational activity. Adrenal system, oversized, hyperactive, capable of rapid hormone deployment. Immune response, aggressive, with markers that 3 different galactic medical databases flagged as concerning. Cardiovascular efficiency, remarkable. Oxygen processing at rates usually seen in apex predators. And yet, no weapons, no combat enhancements, no military implants, no biological weapons, nothing that would justify raising an alarm. She was, by every measurable standard, exactly what she claimed to be: a civilian botanist carrying plant samples. She was also, by those same measurements, something the scanner's AI had never encountered before. A being who registered as simultaneously harmless and potentially dangerous, depending on what? Context? Intent? Mood? I'm going to need you to come with me for secondary screening, Wunhak said, his voice carefully neutral. Secondary screening? What does that mean? It means, Blix interjected gently, that our scanner is very confused about you, and we need to figure out why before we can let you proceed. It's just procedure, nothing to worry about. Violet's eyebrows rose. Your scanner is confused? About me? I'm 5'6". I work with plants, and the most dangerous thing I've done this month is use the spicy sauce at the noodle place near my apartment. How confusing can I be? You'd be amazed, Wunhak muttered, already signaling for backup. 2 more security officers arrived within minutes. A towering Vexthal, who moved on 6 articulated legs, and a Quellan, whose iridescent feathers kept shifting colors based on their emotional state. Currently, those feathers were showing a nervous yellow-green. What's the situation? The Vexthal asked, their voice sounding like rocks grinding together. Wunhak gestured at his screen. Scanner can't classify her. Human, civilian credentials, agricultural conference attendee, but the AI keeps flagging her as undefined threat level. The Vexthal leaned down to look at Violet, who waved awkwardly. Hello. She seems small. That's what I thought, Violet said, sounding almost relieved. Thank you. I'm very small and non-threatening. The scanner disagrees, Wunhak said, and the scanner is never wrong. There's a first time for everything? Violet offered hopefully. There wasn't, and they all knew it. The scanners used by the Galactic Union were built by the Antarians, who had been perfecting security technology for millennia. They didn't make mistakes. They didn't glitch without reason. And they definitely didn't classify beings as undefined, unless something genuinely anomalous was happening. Look, Violet said, setting her plant container down on a nearby bench. I'll cooperate with whatever you need, but can someone please watch these samples? They're from a very specific growth cycle, and I need to present them in 2 days, and if they die, I'm going to be really upset, and my advisor is going to be even more upset, and honestly, that's scarier than any security screening. Blix rippled forward in their cylinder. I'll watch them. I'm good with plants. Had a whole algae garden once. Thank you, Violet said sincerely. Then, to Wunhak, okay, secondary screening. Lead the way. As Wunhak escorted her toward the holding area, calling it that always sounded more ominous than it was really just a waiting room with better locks. He noticed something that made his mandibles click thoughtfully. Violet wasn't nervous. Not really. She was inconvenienced, maybe a little annoyed at the delay, but she walked with the same easy confidence she'd had coming in. Like being detained by station security was just another item on a to-do list, somewhere between pick up travel documents and remember to water the apartment plants. Behind them, the scanner continued to cycle through its analysis, the screen flashing the same message over and over. Reclassifying. Threat assessment. Undefined reclassifying. In the holding area, Violet took a seat on the bench that was clearly designed for beings much larger than her, leaving her feet dangling several inches off the floor. She pulled out her tablet and started scrolling through what appeared to be research notes, completely unbothered. Wunhak stood by the door, all 4 arms crossed again, watching her with increasing bewilderment. Can I ask you something? He finally said. Sure. You're not worried at all, are you? Violet looked up from her tablet, genuinely puzzled by the question. Should I be? I mean, I didn't do anything wrong. This is obviously some kind of technical issue. You guys will figure it out. I'll get cleared, and I'll make it to the conference. Maybe a little late, but that's fine. The keynote speech isn't until tomorrow anyway. You have remarkable faith in bureaucratic efficiency. "I grew up on a colony world," Violet said with a shrug. "I once waited 6 weeks for the supply ship to bring replacement parts for our water filtration system. This is nothing." Unhak was about to respond when his communicator chirped. It was Blix, their voice containing an unusual edge of urgency. "Unhak, we have a problem." "Another one?" "We scanned 5 other humans who came through after her. All of them. Every single one. And? All normal civilian readings, clean classifications, no anomalies whatsoever." Unhak felt something that he would later describe as the distinct feeling that his shift was about to get much more complicated. "So the scanner isn't malfunctioning," he said slowly. "The scanner isn't malfunctioning," Blix confirmed. "Which means—" They both reached the conclusion simultaneously. Whatever the scanner had detected, it was specific to Violet. Not to humans in general, but to this one particular human who liked bacteria and carried plant samples and had feet that didn't touch the floor when she sat on standard-sized benches. This one specific, apparently undefined, human. "I'm calling Dr. Venn," Unhak said. "The xenobiologist? Unless you know another doctor who specializes in figuring out why beings make our scanners have existential crises." In the holding area, Violet continued scrolling through her research notes, occasionally making small humming sounds as she read. She remained blissfully unaware that, in the next room, several very confused security officers were trying to figure out how someone so apparently ordinary could make some of the most sophisticated technology in the galaxy essentially throw up its hands and admit defeat. The scanner, still cycling at the checkpoint, continued its endless loop. Reclassifying, reclassifying, reclassifying. Somewhere in its quantum processors, buried beneath layers of programming and protocol, the AI was having what could only be described as an existential crisis of its own. It had been designed to categorize threats, to identify dangers, to protect the station and its inhabitants from harm. But how do you classify something that is, simultaneously, everything and nothing you're looking for? How do you categorize a paradox? How do you define the undefined? The answer, as it turned out, would require bringing in someone much smarter than a security checkpoint scanner. Someone who specialized in understanding the biological mysteries that made the galaxy such an interesting and occasionally terrifying place. Dr. Hallex Venn was going to have a very interesting afternoon. Dr. Hallex Venn arrived at the security checkpoint looking like someone had interrupted his lunch, which was exactly what had happened. The Antarian scientist moved on 6 articulated limbs, his body resembling what would happen if a spider and a mantis had a philosophical discussion and somehow produced offspring. His 3 primary eyes blinked in sequence while his 2 auxiliary eyes, mounted on stalks that swiveled independently, scanned the security station with obvious distaste. "This had better be worth the interruption," he said, his voice box producing sounds that the translator rendered as posh and vaguely annoyed. "I was in the middle of a very delicate tissue culture." Unhak gestured at his screen with 2 hands, while the other 2 held out a data pad. "Your scanner technology has encountered something it cannot classify." "Impossible. Antarian scanners have successfully analyzed every known species in the Galactic database, including the Void Dwellers, and they barely exist in conventional space-time. Nevertheless," Unhak pulled up the scan results. Dr. Venn's eye stalks leaned forward, examining the data. Then they recoiled. Then they leaned forward again. He made a sound that the translator struggled with before settling on, "Huh? Huh?" Blix burbled from their cylinder. That's a very unscientific assessment, Doctor. I'm being diplomatic. What I wanted to say was considerably more profane. Dr. Ven's primary limbs began manipulating the datapad with remarkable speed, pulling up subroutines and diagnostic logs that Wunhak didn't even know existed. You're telling me this is from a single individual? Human female, early 30s, botanist by profession. Her name is Violet. And she's currently holding area, reading about bacteria. Dr. Ven's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. How very mundane. Let me see her. The holding area door slid open with a hiss that made Violet look up from her tablet. She blinked at the sight of Dr. Ven, who was easily 3 times her size and possessed enough limbs to juggle chainsaws while simultaneously conducting an orchestra and preparing lunch. "Oh, wow," she said, her face lighting up with genuine interest. "Are you Antarian? I've read about your species. Your contributions to quantum biology are absolutely fascinating." Dr. Ven paused mid-step. In his considerable experience dealing with beings who were confused, detained, or otherwise inconvenienced by security procedures, he had never encountered one who opened with academic enthusiasm. "You've read the literature?" he asked, curiosity temporarily overriding his annoyance. "Well, the abstracts mostly. The full papers are behind paywalls and my university's access is limited, but what I could read was amazing. The way you mapped protein folding at the quantum level? Revolutionary." "I appreciate the recognition, but I'm here in a professional capacity. I'm Dr. Hallex Ven, xenobiologist. I've been asked to determine why our scanner cannot properly classify you." Violet set down her tablet. "Any theories?" "Several. None of them particularly pleasant. Would you mind if I ran some tests?" "Will they hurt?" "Only your pride, perhaps. I need to ask you some questions about your background." "Sure, go ahead." Dr. Ven settled into what Violet had learned to recognize as the universal posture of beings about to conduct an interview. "You're from—" He consulted his datapad. "New Manitoba. It's a colony world in the Lambda sector." "And what's it like?" Violet shrugged. "Normal? I mean, for a frontier colony? Cold winters, hot summers, decent soil once you account for the mineral imbalances. We grow really good wheat." "And the local fauna?" "Oh, we've got some interesting wildlife. Lots of hexapods in the forests, some aerial predators that nest in the mountain ranges. The lake near my hometown has these really beautiful bioluminescent fish." Dr. Ven's eye stalks tilted. "Predators. Define predators in this context." "You know, the usual. Hunters, carnivores. They mostly leave humans alone if you're smart about it." "Define smart about it." Violet looked confused by the question. "Don't wander alone at night. Make noise when you're hiking so you don't surprise them. Carry deterrent spray during mating season. Basic stuff." "Mating season," Dr. Ven repeated slowly. "How large are these predators?" "The big ones? Maybe 3 meters long, about 2 meters at the shoulder. They're really not that dangerous if you know what you're doing." Wunhak, who had been listening from the doorway, felt his mandibles lock. 3 meters, 2 at the shoulder. On his homeworld, anything that size was either herbivorous or lived in carefully monitored preserves far from civilization. "And you encountered these creatures as a child?" Dr. Ven asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Sure, sometimes. My school was about 5 kilometers from town, so we'd walk in groups. One time a pack of them followed us for about a kilometer, but we just kept making noise and they eventually got bored." "You walked 5 kilometers while being followed by pack-hunting apex predators." "Well, yeah, the bus system didn't extend that far out." Violet paused. Is this relevant to the scanner thing? Dr. Venn didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up the detailed scan results and began cross-referencing them with the information Violet had just provided. His auxiliary eyes swiveled to read multiple data streams simultaneously, while his primary eyes remained focused on her face. "Tell me about injuries," he said. "Broken bones, severe wounds, anything requiring significant medical intervention." Broke my arm when I was 12, fell off the barn roof trying to fix a solar panel. Broke 3 ribs when I was 16. Got knocked down by a spooked grain hauler. Some stitches here and there, the usual farm accidents." "The usual farm accidents," Dr. Venn murmured, more to himself than to her. "And you recovered from these injuries how quickly?" "I don't know. Normal speed. 6 weeks for the arm, maybe a month for the ribs." Dr. Venn's limbs went very still. On most species, broken ribs took 3 to 4 months to heal properly. 6 weeks for a compound arm. Fracture was unheard of outside of accelerated medical intervention. "One more question," he said quietly. "What's your resting heart rate?" "Last time I checked, around 60 beats per minute." "Why?" 60. For a human of her size and apparent fitness level, that was... Actually, Dr. Venn realized with growing comprehension, that was perfectly normal for a human. The problem wasn't that Violet was unusual for her species. The problem was that her species was unusual for the galaxy. He looked at the scanner results again, but this time with new understanding. The oversized adrenal glands weren't augmentation. They were standard equipment. The aggressive immune response wasn't weaponization. It was environmental adaptation. The bone density, the healing rate, the cardiovascular efficiency, none of it was abnormal. For a human. For a species that evolved on a world that apparently thought 3-meter predators were not that dangerous. "Doctor?" Violet asked, her voice uncertain now. "Is everything okay?" Dr. Venn realized he'd been silent for too long, his mind racing through implications. "Define okay," he said finally. "In the strictest sense, yes. You're perfectly healthy. The scanner isn't malfunctioning. Everything is technically fine." "Then why can't I leave?" "Because," Dr. Venn said, choosing his words carefully, "the scanner detected something it's never encountered before. Not a weapon, not an augmentation, not a biological hazard. It detected potential." "Potential for what?" Dr. Venn looked at this small, cheerful botanist who had walked casually past apex predators as a child and thought broken ribs were a minor inconvenience. "That," he said quietly, "is precisely what worries me." The alarm started as a low whine that built into a shriek that made everyone in the security station freeze. Unhawk's screen exploded with red alerts, each one more urgent than the last. "Containment breach. Cargo Bay 18 hazardous fauna. Loose evacuate adjacent sections. Security teams respond." "What level hazard?" Blix asked, their gelatinous form rippling with sudden tension. Unhawk's mandibles clicked rapidly as he read the classification. "Class 8. 3 specimens. Vark beasts." Dr. Venn's eye stalks retracted slightly, an Antarian fear response. "Vark? Here? Who authorized transport of Vark through a civilian station?" "Does it matter right now?" Unhawk was already moving, grabbing his stun rifle from its mount. "They're loose in the commercial district. Blix, initiate lockdown protocols. Dr. Venn, get to the medical bay and prepare for casualties." "What about me?" Violet asked, standing up from her bench. "You stay here. The holding area is reinforced. You'll be safe." "But my samples?" "We'll be fine," Unhawk shouted over his shoulder as he ran toward the emergency. "Blix is watching them." The door sealed behind him with a heavy thud, leaving Violet alone in the holding area. She sat back down, picked up her tablet, and tried to focus on her research. Outside, the alarm continued to wail. The Vark beasts had not asked to be on Haven 9. They had been sedated, contained, and properly secured for transport to a xenozoology research facility 3 systems away. But somewhere between loading and docking, something had gone catastrophically wrong with their containment pods. Now they were awake, confused, and very, very angry. The first security team to encounter them learned a valuable lesson about the difference between theory and practice. Yes, their stun weapons were rated for creatures up to Class 9. Yes, they had trained for exactly this scenario. Yes, they followed protocol perfectly. The Havark beasts did not care about any of that. The creatures stood on 4 legs that ended in claws designed for tearing through ice and frozen earth. Their heads were low-slung and armored with bone plates that had evolved to shrug off the strikes of other apex predators. Their mouths contained teeth that could punch through metal hull plating if given enough motivation. The stun blasts hit them square on. The beasts paused, shook their massive heads, and continued their rampage. Unarmed arrived with the second wave of security, just in time to see the first Vark shoulder check through a reinforced barrier, like it was made of paper. Beyond the barrier was a shopping concourse where hundreds of civilians had been browsing, eating, and generally going about their day. They scattered, screaming in a dozen different languages. "Fall back," Unarmed ordered, his training overriding his panic. "Contain and corral. Don't engage directly. Drive them toward the cargo bays, away from civilians." It was a good plan. It would have worked if Vark beasts were capable of being corralled by anything short of artillery. The second beast emerged from a ventilation shaft. Apparently they could climb, which was a detail nobody had mentioned in the briefing, and landed directly in the middle of the security formation. Officers scattered, weapons fired. The beast roared, a sound that resonated through the deck plating and made teeth rattle. In the medical bay, 2 sections over, Dr. Venn was setting up triage stations when the lights flickered. The emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a sickly blue glow. His communicator crackled with status updates, none of them good. "Need backup at Junction 42. It's heading toward the residential quarters." "Someone's down. We need medical." He looked at his assistant, a young Quellan whose feathers had gone completely white with fear. "Prepare for incoming wounded. Multiple trauma, likely crush injuries and lacerations." The assistant nodded mutely and began pulling supplies. In the holding area, Violet had given up on reading. The alarm was too distracting, and the occasional tremor that shook the walls was making it hard to concentrate. She stood up, walked to the door, and pressed her ear against it. Shouting. Running footsteps. Something that sounded like metal tearing. She tried the door handle. Locked, obviously. Security protocols. Another tremor. This one stronger. Close. Violet stepped back from the door and took a breath. This was fine. This was a secure facility. They had procedures for this kind of thing. Whatever was happening, trained professionals were handling it. The wall exploded inward. Not the door, the wall. A section of reinforced hull plating simply ceased to be a wall and became jagged metal petals surrounding a hole roughly 3 meters wide. Through that hole came a Vark beast, its armored head lowered, its breath coming in great heaving snorts. Violet and the beast regarded each other for a moment that stretched like taffy. She saw approximately 2 tons of muscle and rage, covered in what looked like natural armor plating, with claws that could disembowel her without effort, and teeth that could bite her clean in half. It saw small, soft prey. The beast charged. Violet dove left, toward where the emergency equipment locker was mounted on the wall. Her fingers found the release catch. Every holding area had one standard safety feature, and the door popped open. Inside, a fire suppression unit, a first aid kit, a maintenance toolkit, and a medical laser cutter used for emergency extractions. She grabbed the toolkit and the cutter without thinking, without planning, operating on something that came from deeper than conscious thought. Some part of her brain that still remembered being prey, that had never forgotten the calculus of survival, took over. The Havark beast skidded on the smooth floor, its claws gouging long scratches as it turned. Its eyes, small, dark, filled with animal fury, locked onto her again. Violet noticed the steam pipe running along the ceiling, saw the emergency valve, understood the opportunity. She yanked a heavy torque wrench from the toolkit and threw it, not at the beast, that would be stupid, at the valve. The wrench hit with a satisfying clang, and the valve spun open. Superheated steam hissed into the room, creating an instant fog bank between her and the creature. The Havark beast roared, confused and blinded. It lunged forward anyway, because that's what apex predators do when confused. They attack. Violet had already moved, circling right, using the steam as cover. Her civilian shoes had rubber soles that gripped the floor well. The beast's claws, designed for ice, scraped and slid. Small advantages. You took what you got. The creature burst through the steam cloud, droplets of condensation running down its armored plates. It was magnificent in the way that natural disasters are magnificent. Beautiful, terrible, and completely indifferent to your continued existence. Violet had climbed onto the bench that ran along the wall, giving her height. When the beast passed beneath her, she dropped onto its back. Later, when reviewing the security footage, Dr. Venn would describe this moment as the precise instant I realized we'd been asking the wrong questions about humanity. The beast bucked, trying to throw her off. Violet wrapped one arm around a bony protrusion on its neck, probably some kind of mating display feature, her brain noted with clinical detachment, and with her other hand, she activated the laser cutter and jammed it into the gap where the beast's armor plates met at the shoulder joint. The creature screamed. Not a roar this time, but a high-pitched shriek of pain and surprise. It had been hit with stun weapons, run through barriers, and generally had a very bad day. But it had never been hurt like this. This was a prey animal fighting back. This wasn't how the world was supposed to work. It threw itself sideways into the wall, trying to crush her. Violet let go, dropped, and rolled. The beast's momentum carried it forward, and it hit the wall hard enough to crack the plating. It staggered, disoriented. Violet's hands found the first aid kit. Inside was a pressurized canister of synthetic adrenaline, used for shock treatment, powerful enough to restart a failing cardiovascular system. She grabbed it and waited. The beast shook its head, trying to clear its vision. Blood ran down its shoulder from the laser wound. It was hurt, but hurt things are often more dangerous. Not less. It charged again. Violet stood her ground until the last possible second, then sidestepped like a matador, a reference none of the watching aliens would understand, and sprayed the entire canister of adrenaline directly into the beast's eyes and nostrils. The Havark beast's biology was not compatible with synthetic adrenaline designed for oxygen-breathing species. Its nervous system misfired, muscles spasming. It crashed into the far wall and collapsed, twitching and whimpering. Not dead, hurt, confused, and temporarily incapacitated. Violet stood in the center of the destroyed holding area, breathing hard, covered in condensation and beast blood and her own sweat. The laser cutter was still clutched in one hand, its power cell depleted. The room looked like a war zone. She looked like she'd just finished a particularly aggressive workout. The door, the actual door, not the beast-shaped hole in the wall, opened. Dr. Venn stood there, all 6 limbs frozen in shock. Behind him, Wunhak stared with all 4 of his compound eyes wide. "So," Violet said, her voice only slightly shaky, "I'm guessing that wasn't part of the security screening?" Dr. Venn's eye stalks slowly surveyed the scene. The destroyed wall, the steam-filled room, the incapacitated Vark beast, and the small human woman who had somehow survived an encounter that should have ended with her as an organic smear on the floor. "The scanner," he said quietly, said Undefined. "I believe I now understand what it was trying to tell us." Wunhak's communicator crackled. "Team leader, status on the third beast? It breached toward the holding areas." "Contained," Wunhak said, his voice distant. "Very contained." "Casualties?" Wunhak looked at Violet, who was now bending down to check on the beast, apparently concerned about whether she'd hurt it too badly. "Define casualties," he said finally. In the security office, the scanner had finally stopped its endless loop of reclassification. The screen now displayed a new message, one that its AI had apparently crafted after witnessing the encounter through the holding area's cameras. Species, human classification, context-dependent threat assessment. Variable, see attached behavioral analysis. Recommendation, maintain diplomatic protocols. Warning, do not provoke. The medical bay had become a hub of controlled chaos. Dr. Venn moved between injured security personnel, his multiple limbs allowing him to treat several patients simultaneously while coordinating with his staff. Most of the injuries were minor. Bruises, lacerations, one broken limb. The Hovark beasts had been contained before causing the catastrophic damage everyone had feared. Thanks, in no small part, to the botanist currently sitting on an examination table, declining treatment. "I'm fine," Violet insisted for the 5th time. "Just some bruises. Really, there are people who actually need help." "You fought a Vark beast with a toolkit," Dr. Venn said, not looking up from the Quellen officer whose wing he was splinting. "Humor me, and let someone scan you for internal injuries." "I didn't fight it. I just survived it." "There's a difference. A philosophical distinction that I'm sure the beast appreciates." Wunhak entered the medical bay, looking significantly worse for wear. One of his arms hung at an odd angle, and his carapace had a crack running along the left side. "The other 2 beasts are contained. We herded them into Cargo Bay 6 and sealed it. Tranquilizer gas is being pumped in now." "Casualties?" Dr. Venn asked. 11 injured, none critical. No fatalities." Wunhak's mandibles clicked in what might have been relief, or might have been residual shock. "It could have been much worse." "It would have been much worse," Blix corrected, their gelatinous form rippling into the medical bay on a transport platform. "If that thing had made it to the residential sections—" They trailed off, not needing to finish the thought. All 3 of them looked at Violet, who was examining a bruise on her forearm with mild interest. "What?" she asked, noticing the attention. "You saved lives today," Wunhak said simply. "That beast was heading toward an area with hundreds of civilians. You stopped it." "I was kind of busy trying not to get eaten, honestly. The life-saving thing was more of a side effect." Dr. Venn finished with the Quellen's wing and finally approached Violet with a medical scanner. "Hold still, please. This won't hurt." "None of this has hurt." "Well, okay. The beast stepping on my foot hurt, but manageable." The scanner hummed as it analyzed her. Dr. Ven's eye stalks bent toward the readout, then recoiled slightly. Your adrenaline levels are already returning to baseline. It's been less than 20 minutes since the incident. Is that unusual? For most species? They'd be chemically compromised for hours, possibly days. Elevated stress hormones, disrupted cognitive function, delayed motor skills. You're reading as if you just completed a moderate exercise session. Violet shrugged. I mean, growing up on New Manitoba, you get used to adrenaline spikes. The first time you see a pack predator, sure, you're shaky for a while. But by the time you're a teenager, you learn to come down from it faster. Otherwise, you'd just be scared all the time, and that's exhausting. You'd just be scared all the time, Wunhak repeated slowly, on your homeworld, where you lived, as children. Well, yeah, it's home. Violet looked between them, clearly confused by their confusion. I mean, it's not like it's dangerous. We have safety protocols. Usually. Blix burbled something that the translator struggled with before settling on, your species has a very generous definition of usually. The door to the medical bay opened again, and a figure entered that made everyone pause. Kulin Bas moved with the gentle, gliding motion characteristic of the Mantarine people, his wing-like appendages creating small currents in the air. As station administrator, he rarely left his office unless something required his personal attention. This, apparently, qualified. Dr. Venn, he said, his voice resonant and calm, I've reviewed the security footage, all of it. Administrator. Dr. Venn dipped his head respectfully. Kulun Bas turned his large, expressive eyes toward Violet. You must be the undefined human. That's not how I'd introduce myself, but technically accurate, I guess. Walk with me, please. You as well, Dr. Venn. Security Chief Wunhak, if you're able. My arm is broken, not my legs, Wunhak said, falling into step behind them. They moved through the corridors of Haven 9, past the remaining cleanup crews and gawking civilians who had heard about the incident. Violet noticed that people stepped aside for their group, not out of fear exactly, but something else. Wariness, maybe. Respect, tinged with uncertainty. Kulin Bas led them to an observation deck that looked out over the vast expanse of space beyond the station. Stars wheeled slowly in the viewport, distant and cold and beautiful. Do you know why I requested humanity be admitted to the Galactic Union? Kulun Bas asked, not looking away from the stars. Because we passed the technological and social development requirements, Violet offered. Many species meet those requirements and are denied entry. We are selective, you see. We look for species that will contribute to the galaxy's stability, its prosperity, its harmony. He finally turned to face her. We did not fully understand what we were admitting when we welcomed humanity. Is this the part where you revoke our membership because I got in a fight with an escaped zoo animal? A sound emerged from Kulin Bas that might have been a laugh. No. This is the part where I explain something that I wish I'd understood sooner. He gestured to Dr. Venn. Tell her what you learned today. Dr. Venn's eye stalks swiveled thoughtfully. The scanner didn't malfunction. It correctly identified you as simultaneously a civilian and a potential threat. Because humans are adaptable. Your biology, your psychology, your entire evolutionary path has been shaped by a world that most species would classify as a death world. New Manitoba is a frontier colony, sure, but not New Manitoba, Dr. Venn interrupted gently. Ancient Earth, your origin world. We have the records now. I pulled them after the incident. Your species evolved alongside predators that would be classified as weapons on most civilized worlds. You survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters that should have rendered your planet uninhabitable. You learned to be both prey and predator, to be fragile and durable, to be peaceful and dangerous as circumstances required. Violet was quiet for a moment. You're saying we're scary. I'm saying you're undefined, Dr. Venn corrected, which is actually more concerning than scary. A weapon we can classify, catalog, regulate. But how do we categorize a species that can be anything it needs to be? Kulun Bas moved closer to the viewport. This afternoon, I watched security footage of a civilian botanist defeat a Class 8 predator using maintenance equipment and medical supplies. She showed tactical awareness, environmental exploitation, pain tolerance, and improvisational capability that our military specialists train for years to develop. And when it was over, she was primarily concerned about her plant samples. They're temperature sensitive, Violet said weakly. This is what the scanner detected, Kulun Bas continued. Not weapons, not augmentation, potential. The potential for violence, certainly, but also for compassion, for destruction and creation, for being precisely what the situation demands. He turned back to her. This is why we admitted humanity, even knowing imperfectly what you were. The galaxy needs adaptable species. It needs beings who can be botanists and warriors, scientists and survivors. So I'm not in trouble. You incapacitated a Havark beast that was threatening my station, Kulun Bas said. I should probably give you a medal. I'm certainly not going to punish you. Wunhak clicked his mandibles. Administrator, with respect, what do we do about the scanner classification problem? We can't detain every human who comes through as undefined. No, we can't. Kulun Bas looked at Dr. Venn. You've had time to analyze the data. What's your recommendation? Recalibrate the threat assessment protocols, Dr. Venn said immediately. Add a new classification category, specifically for humans and any other species that demonstrate context-dependent threat profiles. Call it Category Adaptive. That's very diplomatic, Blix said, having followed the group. The security manual probably needs to be more specific. Such as, human threat assessment is determined by human intent. Maintain diplomatic courtesy at all times. Do not create situations where human intent shifts from peaceful to defensive. Blix rippled thoughtfully. Also, maybe add, remember that civilian and incapable are not synonyms. Violet raised her hand slightly. Can I ask a question? Of course, Kulun Bas said. Am I cleared to attend my conference now? Because it starts tomorrow and I really need to set up my presentation and check on my samples, and honestly, I just want to talk about bacteria for a while. Today has been a lot. The administrator's expression, as much as his species had expressions, might have been amusement. Yes, you're cleared. With our apologies for the delay and our gratitude for your assistance during the emergency. Great. Thank you. Can someone show me where the conference center is? As Violet was escorted out by a still somewhat stunned Wunhak, Dr. Venn and Kulun Bas remained on the observation deck. Do you think they know? Dr. Venn asked quietly. Humans, I mean. Do they understand what they are? I doubt it, Kulun Bas said. To them, they're just normal. They judge themselves by their own standards, not ours. They don't see themselves as remarkable because everyone they know is equally remarkable. That's almost comforting. Or terrifying. Or both. In the security office, technicians were installing the updated scanner protocols. The next human who passed through, a merchant carrying spices from ancient Earth, triggered the new display. Species, human classification, category adaptive threat assessment, context dependent, status, cleared note, maintain standard diplomatic protocols. It was cleaner, more professional. It didn't fully capture the complexity of what the scanner had learned, but it would do. 2 days later, Violet gave her presentation on nitrogen-fixing bacteria to an audience that was notably larger than expected. Word had spread about the botanist who fought a Vark beast, and suddenly, agricultural science was much more interesting to the galactic community. She noticed the attention, but didn't quite understand it. Her presentation was solid, her research was good, but it wasn't that revolutionary. Still, people asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely engaged. Afterward, a Thulian student approached her nervously. "Can I ask, the thing with the beast, how did you stay so calm?" Violet considered the question. "I don't think I was calm exactly. I was just focused. When something's trying to eat you, you don't really have time for panic. You just do what needs doing." "But weren't you afraid?" "Terrified," Violet admitted. "But being afraid and being helpless aren't the same thing. My dad used to say, 'Fear is just your body getting ready to solve a problem.'" The student processed this, their feathers shifting through several colors. "Your species is very strange." We get that a lot, apparently. That evening, Violet returned to her quarters and finally checked her messages. One from her advisor asking about the presentation. One from her sister asking about the monster fight that was apparently trending on several galactic social networks. One from station administration thanking her formally for her assistance. And one from the scanner system itself, an automated message that appeared to have been generated by its AI. Classification Update Acknowledgement. User, Violet status, resolved threat level, appropriately categorized. Additional note. Thank you for teaching me something new about undefined variables. My programming is better for it. Violet smiled at that. Even artificial intelligences could learn. Even systems designed for absolute certainty could acknowledge complexity. She set down her tablet, looked at her plant samples, which had survived their ordeal perfectly, and started preparing for the next day's workshop. Just another botanist doing botanist things. Undefined, but doing just fine.